One of my all-time favorite artists is 20th century Belgian surrealist painter René Magritte. Even if you do not recognize his name, Magritte's paintings have become some of the most recognizable works of the 20th century, and I am confident that you would be immediately familiar with them on sight. Known for his clean and playful visual style, coupled with what can only be described as philosophical wit, Magritte used ordinary objects, pipes and apples, bowler hats and clouds, curtains and windows, all of which he placed in unexpected or impossible juxtapositions, such that our expectations are upended and our sense of what is actual is confounded. In this way, Magritte's art blurs the line between the image presented on his canvas and the reality we expect to perceive. A few years ago at the Art Institute in Chicago, they held a retrospective on Magritte's work, and the complement of his paintings were extensive. In one of his works entitled, appropriately, The Human Condition, the images are particularly arresting. In this work, the artist depicts a window looking out onto a pastoral scene. Just in front of that window stands an easel, and on that easel rests a canvas on which is painted a pastoral scene, the exact same scene as we apprehend through the window. And then you notice that the landscape on the canvas lines up perfectly with the scene we see through the window. A painted cloud aligns exactly with a real cloud. A painted tree trunk merges seamlessly into its actual counterpart. And as we look at the painting, we are forced to ask, is what I am seeing the world as it is, or is it but a representation of it? Is what I take to be reality, as seen through the window, the actual scene, or is the painting of the scene on the canvas the image I apprehend? In essence, what seems to be obvious, is it truly real? By juxtaposing the easel and the window, each one complements and completes the other. And in this way does Magritte invite us to consider if what we apprehend of the world around us is real, or whether we only think what we see is real, but in reality we are being fooled by our lion eyes. These questions make Magritte's artwork consistently compelling. But 27 centuries earlier, before surrealism or Magritte ever entered the scene, long before modern art played games with human perception, the prophet Isaiah, speaking in 8th century BCE in Jerusalem, already understood how untrustworthy human perception and our senses can be. In describing the idealized Davidic leader, understood in both Jewish and Christian traditions to be the Messiah, Isaiah tells us that such a divinely anointed leader would see beyond the appearances, recognizing in others a deeper truth than what is perceived and taken in on first glance. Possessing this degree of insight, such a leader, Isaiah tells us, such a leader would govern with faithfulness and righteousness, fairness and equity, in contrast to so many leaders of Isaiah's own time, and if we're honest, is not so different from our modern day. Thus Isaiah declares, such a leader shall not judge by what his eyes see, nor decide by what his ears hear. After all, our eyes perceive, initially at least, only what is on the surface. Our ears catch sounds produced by movements of air, and we construct meaning from those vibrations. But Isaiah points out that neither human sight nor sound reveals the truth of a person's heart, nor the full reality of a situation or circumstance. In this, Isaiah is saying something radical. Sight and hearing are not enough. Do not rely upon your first impressions. Human perceptions can deceive. Just as Magritte's surrealist images trick us into questioning what we plainly see before us, is the painted scene on the easel a replica of what we see through the window, which itself is part of a larger painted scene? And are we able to discern the truth, the reality, hidden beneath or behind the surface facade? Isaiah's point is this: yes, we see something, and yes, we hear something, but meaning in that apprehension is not guaranteed, and all too often, what we perceive with our senses is neither reliable, accurate, nor real. I was fortunate to learn from a giant in interfaith relations, a mentor of mine named Rabbi Jack Bemperad. Among much else that he taught me, he offered this crucial insight, which I share now with you. There are times when we must literally learn again what we think we already know. Rabbi Bemperad taught that the heights of spiritual life, that which Isaiah points us towards, begins with truly becoming cognizant of what is actually before us. Sometimes we look and see something familiar, but we must recognize it. We must rethink and re-understand and apprehend it in an altogether new way. Or in Isaiah's paraphrased words, we must not rely merely on what our eyes see or what our ears hear. Like the ideal king, the Messiah or divinely anointed leader, we must learn to hear anew and learn to see as if for the first time, using what famed cellist Yo-Yo Ma describes as beginner's eyes. Rabbi Bemperad insists that most of us, most of the time, move through the world seeing only the images we already carry of one another, hearing only what fits our earlier assumptions and our previously held preconceived beliefs. And this is Isaiah's point exactly, which brings us back to René Magritte and what is likely his most well-known painting. Entitled The Treachery of Images, this painting shows us a man's smoking pipe above the caption, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." This is not a pipe. It looks like a pipe, but you cannot fill it with tobacco and smoke it. It is not actually a pipe at all. After all, it possesses no physical form. It is but the image of a pipe, and therefore, though we recognize it as a pipe, Magritte teaches us that it is not a pipe. And yet we fall for this error all the time. We see a photograph and recognize it as a substitute for a person or an entire story. We hear a familiar voice, and we assume it tells us the full truth. We believe our impressions, which are in fact fictions, but we take them to be fact. Magritte calls this the treachery of images because of our propensity to confuse representation for reality, for our propensity to mistake an idol for the ideal, to sacrifice that which is on the surface and fail to see the substance. And what we want to be true for what Isaiah calls what is righteous and just and true beneath the surface of things, which of course is exactly what we do too often with one another, and we do it all the time. How often do we substitute an overly simple mental picture of a person for the complex, multifaceted human being standing before us? How often do we confuse one's outward appearances for their inner substance? And how often do we mistake what is told to us for the truth of an entire story? Isaiah interrupts our assumptions and says, "Stop. Look again. You are not actually seeing what you think you apprehend." Or in Rabbi Bemperad's words, recognize what is right in front of you, even if you have seen and heard it 1,000 times before. Allow me still another image. Consider the facades on a Hollywood studio lot, a row of storefronts that from the right angle appear to be an entire city block. The brickwork appears solid, the windows seem real, the street scene is utterly convincing. But step behind the facade and you see 2x4s, scaffolding, cables, and open space. What looks substantial from the outside is often nothing more than a cleverly painted surface designed to appear whole from a distance. These sets, such as one might find on the Paramount lot, are built to project a reality that isn't there at all, inviting us, if only for a moment, to believe the illusion, to buy into what we refer to as the magic of Hollywood. And while we may know intellectually that what we see on television or in film is not actual or real, we so wish it to be so that we suspend disbelief and embrace our fantasies. And two, we fall for the same trap in our own lives. How often do we compare our own inner complicated experience to someone else's perceived projected serenity and calm? In 12-step programs, this is called comparing our insides to another outsides. And it is a dangerous business, this. For the framing is false and lulls us into the belief that only we are troubled by life's challenges, and the rest of the world lives untroubled, as if. So it is that the prophet Isaiah arrives this morning to stir us and shake us and wake us up. Do not judge by what your eyes perceive, nor decide by what your ears hear. Judge with righteousness, faithfulness, equity, and humility. All of us surely know what it feels like to be perceived or to be cast in a false light. I certainly know this experience and suspect you do as well. We know it to be incredibly painful, especially when we are judged wrongly as a result. Someone sees a single moment in our life and believes they know our entire story. Someone hears secondhand information about us and then assumes they understand what actually happened and why. One's quiet is taken as indifference. Another's hesitation is experienced as incompetence. One's conviction or preparedness is perceived perhaps as arrogance. Another's quiet or sadness is portrayed or judged to be distance or perhaps indifference. Such apprehensions hurt and they mislead because such perceptions are false. And by the same token, few experiences are more powerful than being and feeling truly seen. When someone recognizes our effort, makes space for our indecision, acknowledges our sincerity or kindness, sees through to our intention and our dignity and the fullness of our complex humanity. Being seen in these ways uplifts the human spirit and reflects the world of relationships the prophet Isaiah imagines and urges you and me to work toward, a world built on truly seeing the people in the world as they are. All of which brings us to this very moment. For Isaiah is not merely or simply sketching an idealized leader. The prophet is sketching what an idealized community can look like. One of the great personal joys for me of being a part of Calvary is expounding on texts like Isaiah's this morning, which both of our communities treasure. Jews hear Isaiah's words as pointing toward a future of a redeemed world, and Christians hear Isaiah's words as pointing toward the Messiah. But we hear the same call. Let righteousness be our way of seeing. Let compassion be our way of judging. Let humility guide how we understand and interact with one another. My friends, if we remember Magritte's lesson that the canvas is not the window, that the image is not the thing, and we can recall Rabbi Bemperad's teaching that we must learn to see again, to recognize what is often right in front of us. And if we would hear and take in Isaiah's admonition, not to judge others or the world by what our eyes see at first glance, or what our ears hear initially, or what we feel we know to be true, then perhaps, just perhaps, by seeing beyond what we merely apprehend and assume, you and I may yet bring nearer the future Isaiah imagines. Amen.